you qualify for more funding for your clients and do it a lot faster through my Tetris board method. I've been using this for the past 5 years now to get massive funding for my clients in the millions of dollars. We now help different funders all across the country here get massive wins like 30K at Chase, 90K at Chase, 50K at Amex, 30K at PNC, 50K at US Bank, 150K at Chase, and so many more. And basically, this is really important because when we go and apply for funding, it's based on two main criteria. The LLC itself, so mainly no red flags, so no high risk, no negative history, amongst other things, but also the individual, the credit. Okay, and so within the credit profile, we need to be not only strong with comparables, with good long history, we need to also be reliable. And so with this, we would need to have low utilization, no negative accounts, but also low or no inquiries, okay, which is going to be the main topic of today. Okay, low or no inquiries, because basically if you have more than 3 inquiries on any one bureau, let's say this is Experian right here, Experian, Equifax, or TransUnion. If you have more than 3 inquiries on any one bureau, you're automatically going to get denied, basically. You'll automatically get turned down for funding and not get the approvals. And if you do get approved, you'll get a small dummy sub 5K limit is what I call it. Okay, so basically this is very important because basically when we're going to apply for funding, what we need to do is ideally optimize our clients and try to clean up some of these things like the negative history, like paying down utilization, like adding strong comparable accounts, among other things, but also this inquiry factor. Because if we do have more than 3 inquiries, we're very, very limited in what we can do for funding. So this is all going to tie into the Tetris board here in a second. But basically, before we get started here with the funding process, like I said, we're trying to optimize our clients with the LLC, with the strong credit profile, with the reliable credit profile. And so amongst these things, we're going to have the inquiries. Okay, so because of that 3+ rule, we need to ideally create as much space as possible, basically. So if we think about the 3 hard rule, like a Tetris board, basically our clients are going to come to us with some inquiries already on their reports. Okay, and so this might be, again, Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion. And so what we try to do is remove as many inquiries as possible before starting the funding process. So we're allowed to can remove any inquiry that is not attached to an open personal primary account. Okay, so what does this mean? So we can remove denials, we can remove shotgun applications, and we can remove biz applications. And not only just the no's, we can actually remove the yeses as well, okay, which is basically the entire point right here. Okay, so the entire premise here is that basically we can challenge inquiries on the credit report that are not attached to open personal accounts, because if we do challenge them as being unrecognizable, which is one of the credit repair strategies basically, then if we do have an account associated with it, well, they can very easily point to that account and say, well, isn't that yours, basically, right? But if we got denied for something, well, there's nothing to attach to it. So very easy to remove that inquiry. If we did a shotgun application, what I mean by that is if you went to go and apply for a mortgage for a house, they probably applied it with 8 different lenders. Now you have 8 different options on your credit report. If you just applied for an auto loan, they just applied for 20,000 different loans, right? So you have a lot of inquiries on there. And so you can remove all the inquiries that are not attached to the actual loan you were approved for. And then for business applications, the key here is that if you got denied, well, obviously you don't have the account, so you can dispute those. But if you did get approved, well, those accounts are not going to show up on your personal credit report. So we can actually dispute those. So that's kind of the whole premise here of the Tetris board method basically is that before we get started, we're going to remove as many inquiries as we can so we can create space here, because inside of our Tetris board, what's going to happen is that if we do add more inquiries, we already know that we have this hard line right here, right? It's like when we're playing Tetris, we have these different blocks that are kind of falling down, right? And so what we're trying to do here is try to remove them by filling out the lines, right? But eventually, if you have a block that goes over, you lost the game. Well, in this case, our game is having too many inquiries on the board. So we're going to start with the inquiry removal process to try to create as much space as possible before we start with clients. But if we do have some attached open accounts to these inquiries, we might not be able to. So that's why we'll start with this. But we're going to have a starting point for round one applications. So our round one might look something like this, okay? So we removed as much as possible. So this means that basically we have one slot open on Experian, 2 slots open on Equifax, and then 2 more on TransUnion, okay? So that's basically our potential. So 1, 2, and 2, okay? So now when we start round one of funding, we can try to optimize for banks that will pull these bureaus, okay? So some banks are a little bit more random than others, but most banks tend to have a preferred credit bureau that they pull from. Okay, Experian, like Chase most often pulls Experian. Elon Financial most often pulls TransUnion. Truist most often pulls Equifax. Okay, so this also changes, but at the time of this video, it's kind of the most common ones. So when we prepare a client for funding, we're going to look at our Tetris board and build out the funding sequence based on these open slots that we have on the Tetris board. Okay, and so then what's going to happen is that now we're going to fill up our Tetris board. So although these were green with available slots, what will happen once we submit applications is that these slots will fill up because we applied, right? But the entire key here, as we start funding and as we continue funding, basically is going to be the fact that we can actually clean up the Tetris board. Okay, so we have this hard line right here. Let's say that we applied for everything, right? But these particular ones were the only ones attached to open personal accounts. Well, all these round one inquiries that we had right here, let's say that was maybe make these different color, tied to our funding applications. Okay, so this is going to be funding applications blue. Okay, we stopped because we knew that if we submitted any more applications, we'd be automatically denied, right? So we didn't continue. We just stopped once we maxed out the board. Now what we'll do after round one is do the inquiry removal process, because we're allowed to, because these are business applications. These are not showing up on the personal credit report. So what we'll do in this case is that we're going to now come in. We're going to basically stop the round of funding, right? So that's basically the premise here, is that we're going to start funding. We're going to submit these applications. Then we have to stop because we don't have any more slots left. But what we can do after round one, stop, clean, right? And then what we'll do here is that we're going to reset our board. Then we can reset our board by removing these inquiries that we just added. These are business inquiries that are not attached to an open personal primary account. So there's nothing to point to prove these inquiries, basically. So now we can reset for round two. Okay, so now we can reset for round two. So now what will happen is that we can basically just go after the exact same bureaus that we did the first time. So now I'm going to add this next round of funding right here. So let's do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, now we're submitting more applications, getting even more funding. Okay, then what happens here? Now we're going to stop once we fill out the board. Once we do that, we'll then clean everything. And so I'd recommend once you do submit applications, you do want to wait until you receive the account, you activate the account. And if you want to be as safe as possible, maybe even spend a couple dollars just to kind of lock it in. And then you submit the inquiry dispute process, okay? But you stop, you clean, and then you reset the board. And then we go into round 3, okay? Then we go into round 3 here. We're gonna do the whole thing over again. It's basically how you can just keep going through funding. You can go through funding a lot faster. If you have good inquiry removal processes, you might be able to remove most inquiries within 10 days. So you're basically going through 2 or 3 rounds of funding within 45 days, basically. So that's the entire premise right here when we're optimizing for our different rounds of funding. Usually my round one of funding applications are going to be big wins. So these are going to be banks that I'm hoping to get massive approvals on so that my clients are really happy as we just get started and they're fully committed to the experience and they're not just going to drop us basically. So we want to start with some really big wins at the major banks. Round two, we're going to go for all banks that have a no checking account requirement or a fast checking account requirement. So no or fast checking, because some banks do want to have a relationship established. So if you apply without a checking account, you might not get the best results. So we have to have the right data points in place, things that we share with my clients at a Credit Coach Academy. If you want to have all the best industry insights, you can click on the link down below to work with us. But that would be round two. And then basically after that, round three and on, then we would apply for everything else. Everything else. So these might be banks that need these checking accounts. So let's say some banks like perhaps US Bank, they tend to prefer 30 days in the checking account. And so after the 30 days, we've already gone through this round one, round two. Now the 30 days are up, so we can go and apply for US Bank, right? Some banks want a really long waiting period, like maybe Bank of America. We've been seeing 90-day requirements. So then as we go through round two, round three, round five, right now we're at the 90-day mark since we started. And so now you can apply for those, right? But we have plenty of options here before we actually hit that mark. But because of the Tetris board method here, we can remove, can continue, remove, continue, just go a lot faster. And so a lot of this is determined on the inquiry removal process. So you have the option of doing it done for you for clients, right? I've definitely done this in my business before and optimized for that. And the way to do it is to have a really good process in place to collect the documents, because you're gonna have to make sure that you can get verified and do everything for the client. Very, very important. So you have to be very safe with your documents, have a really good put together process as well. So some good softwares online that allow you to collect everything, like Credit Repair Cloud, for example, just to upload all the documents and keep it in a safe spot. You can also have that, but then you also need like a phone system to apply. Okay, so a phone system to do that. You'll need like a good VPN and all that just to be able to process everything. So phone system, you might use something like Grasshopper, for example, so you have a phone number for each client. So it's definitely a lot more complex, but at least you're driving it forward and making sure that the inquiries are not going to slow down your funding, basically. So done for you is one way to do it. Done with you is something that I usually now optimize for. So right here, all we need to have is just really good SOPs or trainings. Okay, so make it very, very clear. Trainings like scripts. What do we say? What do we click on, right? Broken down videos. What I have with the FTC report, for example, is like a step-by-step list. Here's exactly what you click on. Here's exactly what you write. So it answers a lot of their questions without us. You can also do like one-on-one calls, right? So you can kind of guide them through that process. You can ask them to commit to getting it done. So it's very, very important, okay? Because we're all business owners here. We're helping people qualify for business funding. So if it's not on the calendar, if it's not a to-do task, they're probably going to forget about it. And that's why you're constantly chasing after them. So something we do inside of my funding offer is, when are you committing to getting these inquiries off? When are you committing to removing or disputing on the FTC website? Let's lock in tomorrow at 2 p.m. Then my team's going to follow up with them tomorrow at 2 p.m. Hey, are you actively doing it right now? Like, do you have any questions? I'm here to support you as you go through it, okay? And then we'll do a book to book, which means that, let's say that my client does commit to do it tomorrow at 2 p.m. and they're submitting for Experian. Well, I know that Experian usually removes it in 48 hours. So what I'll do, let's say it's a Monday, we're doing the dispute on Tuesday. I might book the next call for Friday so we can look at the report, make sure it got taken off, and move on to the next steps. Okay, so a couple of ways right here is just having really good training so that they can do it on their own, one-on-one calls if needed so that we can actually do it with them. Make sure we get a commitment from them so we can lock in a time to get it done. And then book to book so they actually move a lot faster and we're always live on the calendar and our clients are never falling off. So a couple of different ways to lock that in. So ultimately, this is how we go through faster funding. So we're going to be doing like the optimization phase amongst all the other things I talked about. So LLC prep, and then credits is going to be, you want to be reliable and strong. Amongst reliable is going to be the inquiries. Okay, so we're going to remove as many inquiries as possible all inquiries possible. And then once we start the funding process, then we're going to go through different rounds. So round one, we're going to submit as many applications as possible based on this Tetris board. Once we're maxed out, then we'll clean or sweep, okay? Then we'll reset the Tetris board, okay? Round two, then we go through round two and submit the applications again. Then same thing, okay? Round three, we'll first clean, reset the Tetris board, and then apply, and hopefully get as much funding as possible. You should be able to go through at least 3 rounds of funding within really 45 days and get as much funding as possible for your clients. So that's the entire breakdown right there as how the Tetris board really works and how you can move a lot faster with your funding clients. If you do need additional help with this inquiry removal process, with getting faster and bigger funding wins, exactly what we do inside of Credit Coach Academy. You get all my SOPs, all my trainings for your team, for your clients, and really help you maximize the funding outcomes so you collect a lot more success fees and you really hit the next level. So if you do want additional help from myself and my team, you can click on the link down below to learn more about Credit Coach Academy. But otherwise, I hope this video is very helpful for you. If you have any questions at all, please be sure to drop them down below. And thanks so much for spending some time with me here today. I'll see you in the next video.